close to scale.
And then, did anyone?
Oh, yeah, they all did, except the buyer. Did you look at your app?
I did. Maybe I wasn't looking at it. Oh, yeah, I can't find it on
Is it
Instagram. Because.
Yeah.
What are you guys looking for?
The rise.
Right.
I can send it to both of you.
Yeah, if you could, that'd be great. Everyone did send that.
So, any questions, concerns, things you want to work through before we get started?
I did pick up like, I got a lead from an open house that I covered,
Nice.
so I see that we're working with buyers and
Yeah.
sellers.
We'll be covering that today. So, anything you guys want to cover before we get started?
We need to talk to way more people.
As
Fair
do-
enough.
as
Fair
do
enough.
I.
I mean, that's the idea, you
Right.
know? But here's what I've been telling everybody at my bull group. I'm I'm not in charge of our table, but with my accountability partner and all that, but Sam Zolman, I don't know if you guys know him, he's in charge of our table. But we talk about 100, which is what we should be doing. I'm not disputing that, but remember, 10 a day can be text, email, 10 would be conversations. But if on average you're talking to 5 people a week and you double that to 10 this week, go to 15 or 20 the following week, that's a victory in itself. We can't go from 5 to 100 necessarily. But that should be the goal because that is what builds a big business. So keep that in mind.
45 conversations that I thought went really, really well.
Good.
But unfortunately, no one knew anyone. And I know these people pretty well, and I think Greg was pretty persuasive. They're like, I just,
Yeah.
I just keep that in.
Well, you are putting them on the spot.
Anybody, yeah.
Yeah. But you are, because you're calling them out of the blue. But remember the analogy, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where there's a 4-lane highway. We're trying to just be in the middle of the road. So when the time does come, they see us. We're not off to the side. Too many people get passive and they just kind of wait off to the side and hold out hope that they'll remember this conversation from years ago. And it's not gonna happen. So keep that in mind when we're asking for the referrals. So, but yeah, like Jesse said today, working with buyers and sellers, so getting towards the end of the session. And so 5 sessions left, 4 after this week. But we're getting down to the nitty gritty. So we've done all this work to get the leads. Now we need to learn how to work with them. So here we're talking about success with clients. So we're just talking about clients as a whole. Then we'll break it down to buyers, sellers, and then don't forget about co-op agents. Because that can, especially as things change in this business.
What's co-op? I'm sorry.
So the other agent,
Oh,
so the
okay.
agent on the other side. So as things change. And we're gonna start seeing a lot of cooperation probably get a little bit more dicey. Lauren South in ALC meeting last week shared, forget the name of the agent, but it's over in the Columbia City area. They were doing their payroll group team meeting. One of their teammates came to this meeting where it was the first one that they had seen, where the BAC was 0%. Called, just be like, hey, what's going on? Is there any chance of getting commission? Blah, blah. She's like, nope, this is the new normal. You might as well get used to it. And I was competing with 3 other people for this listing, and this is the only way I could win it. We're gonna start seeing that. We've already seen it where people drop their commission to win the deal. That's essentially their value proposition. But that misunderstanding, it's just gonna be the new normal, so just get used to it. Basically saying as a buyer's agent, just get used to not getting paid or chasing down your own money. So just it's starting to happen. So just be careful. So working with agents and keeping good relationships going is gonna be more vital than it's ever been.
I guess,
Uh-huh.
we don't see it much now, but, appraisers a lot of times will reach out, call and say, hey, I'm working on an appraisal and you sold this house over in this neighborhood. I'll call back. Many times the appraiser will say, oh, thanks for calling. I hardly ever get a call back from the agents. And I don't know, but I think over the years, occasionally, there's been an appraiser that's on the fence or whatever. It just can't hurt. I just don't, it's like, it you were dating someone and met their parents, you know, you're gonna bite your lip, you're gonna try to say the right thing, and whether that's another agent that you're gonna come up with a year from now and you don't know it, or it's an appraiser, you can call it kiss butt. You might just say, do the right thing and help that other appraiser out. They talk as well.
Mhm.
They have agents on their list, just like you're talking about. Agents have agents on the list. They're appraisers that look at a name as the listing agent, go, okay, you wanna be a jerk all the time? And if it doesn't, I'm not saying that they're saying I'm gonna cut it no matter what, but they're not getting the benefit of the doubt on certain things. And you just never know when it's gonna come back and pay off for you to treat people right, and, you know, like even that scenario with in Columbia City. I just assumed they were just doing what they had to do to get the listing. I'm not getting it done. I don't like it. But I'm not gonna burn a bridge at any point for any reason. So I agree that those are good comments.
Mhm. So, this is there's a lot of people in this business, but it's a weirdly small world that we operate in, so kind of what goes around is gonna come around, so. And we talked about this at Bold, this statement right here. Coming from contribution, we're not just looking to make a quick buck. So virtually every top producing agent we have ever worked with has a deep sense and almost inherent sense of service. They have a servant's heart and place their buyers or sellers real estate experience above all else. They are always thinking service. That's why when we talk about your guys' deals, I don't say, hey, let's just tell them we're gonna do it this way. It's like, hey, here's option A, B, maybe C and D. Here's the merits of both, the drawbacks of both. Here's what I would recommend. Give them all those options. Give them the pros, give them the cons, and let them make a decision. That's serving them the best way possibly, because it puts the decision and all the facts in front of them. That's why I always like to follow up with an email or send the email right before we hop on the phone call. Hey, here's what's going on. Or we're gonna be talking about so much. I want it to be where you can go back and recap and think about it before we make a decision. So successful clients. So we've talked a lot about referrals. We're gonna actually be talking about referrals today in the command class at 12:15, if you guys want to stick around. We make a great impression, and Josh shared a perfect example last week. It wasn't not even his client in that deal, but he made such an impression on the client on the other side. He's getting the referrals, not the agent that was serving that client. It can be that, I don't want to say that simple, but he even had been last week, he's like, I was just trying to help. Like, they needed help. It was my own house that I had sold, so I went over there, showed him some stuff. Provided top level service, and now he's getting the referral, not that other agent. How would you feel if you're that other agent and found out like all the referrals are going to the agent that was on the other side? That just gives us a little insight into what that was probably like working with that agent. Probably not that great. So we have to keep that in mind that, again, it's not necessarily gonna happen immediately. But in the upcoming months, maybe even a year or two down the road, it will. When you start getting to about year 3 in your career is when you really start seeing referrals, repeat business and things like that start to happen. So you got enough history, you kind of made it through the first couple tough years, if you will, and then you start seeing that extra business come in. If you turn to 16.3 in your guides, it all comes down to great communication. And we talked about this a few different sessions during Ignite. It starts from building a strong foundation. And this starts in meeting number 1. What is working with you gonna entail? What's the expectation from both sides? How are we gonna communicate best? How do your clients prefer to be communicated with? And on and on and on. You're setting that tone from day 1, meeting 1. Then inside of that and throughout the transactions, you're setting and managing the expectations. Again, think about it as we're answering questions before our clients even realize it's a question. Seems simple, but we get so wrapped up, especially if we have a transaction coordinator where we just send it off and then they do everything. You should still be watching from a bird's eye view. Because one, you should know the process. But two, you need to know when the process is not going as planned. It should be you catching it, not your client calling and saying, these things aren't going right. That's too late. We should be catching it ahead of time. I think all of you, last week when I asked this question, who's all moved? And I think all three of you said you moved. Think about the chaos that's going on in your life. So if we do these first two steps right, it's creating a peace of mind for our clients. We're at least taking some of the chaos out of the equation. And ultimately enhances your credibility. It's, I know if this person says they're gonna do it, it's going to get done. That's where I'm at with a lot of my vendor partnerships. If I send a title order in, the people I send it to have earned my trust, like, I will be watching from a bird's eye view, but I have that confidence because they've earned it time and time and time again. Soon as that title order's in, I'm good just letting the reins go because I know that's how your client should feel about you. Soon as that first meeting's done, they should feel this ultimate comfort in working with you. You're gonna be looking for the best houses for them. You're gonna help them negotiate the best deal possible. The best terms possible. When you say you're gonna do something, you do it. There's nothing worse than you forgot, and 2 days later, your client's like, hey, weren't you supposed to do X, Y, and Z? And you're like, it will happen, not saying it won't, but you don't want that same client to have that same conversation with you like 7 times. Then it becomes, I'll believe it when I see it, and that's not good. So as we go through these sections, as we start thinking about presentations and things like that, because we'll have that coming up in the next couple sessions, because making and receiving offers, we're gonna talk about it a little today, but we're gonna tidy it into the next couple sessions as well. When you build your presentations for the buyers and presentations for the sellers, keep these things in mind. Ask the right questions, and a lot of the ones in designs and command have a lot of great questions. There's way too many questions. I do recommend stripping a lot of them out. Keep it to a very more basic thing. So I think it's like 4 pages of questions. At that point, it's an interview. You know, we don't want our clients to feel, but if the conversation's going well, maybe have a second set of questions like, man, this is going really well. Let's keep it going. But maybe have your first, hey Josh, 5 to 10 questions. If they get burned out, I can tell I'm losing them after 10. If I only get these 10, I'm good.
Sorry.
It's a ginormous rifle. Oh, no.
That's what everybody says.
So, just real quick, so with like that listing in, from the city or the county or wherever it was, and we had their agent said, you know, this is the new norm, like figure out how you're gonna get paid or whatever. Is it, so can all loans have your commission rolled into it except for VA?
VA and FHA, I don't think anything's 100% yet.
Like none of the banks haven't quite figured out yet.
Well, the VA said definitely
Right.
it's not happening. They may get enough kickback though, because it's really gonna hurt veterans. Because now they're gonna have to go and ask for it from the sellers, closing costs, concessions, whatever you wanna call it. They may get to a point, and that's where they really loosened up the appraisal standards on VAs about a couple of years ago. They're still more difficult, but they saw so many veterans, VAs losing out because the standards on the appraisals were so high, and I was doing this too. If you got anything besides VA, you're gonna go with it. And if that's the only loan, that's not gonna let you ask for concessions. You're gonna do it, you know?
So even if with your commission rolled into the loan and it doesn't, the house is not worth, like say it's worth 200,000 and then you get your 3%. And that's above really what the house is worth, they'll still loan them the money except for the VA and FHA.
Well, won't be, on a VA, it wouldn't be built into the loan.
Right. But the
Yeah, it's gonna be
others-
closing costs, so it won't be on the offer price, so those are two different things. So let's just say. that
So
really
it's a
wobbly.
closing cost, that's. how
Correct,
I
they're
wrote
gonna
it.
give you, so the way it works now is, it's a percentage based, percentage of the purchase price. Depending on the loan, sometimes it's 3%, sometimes it's 6%, I forget which loans are which. You cannot get closing costs or concessions higher than that. So what people are asking the lenders to do is increase that by 3%, so if it's 6%, make it 9%, if it's 3%, make it 6%. Because then you could build in that extra percentage and the closing cost. So, but that doesn't change the price of the house.
Mhm.
So 3 levels of service. 16.4 in your guide. Let's start with purpose. What does that say to you guys?
Like the purpose of the 3 levels of service?
No, like
What purpose is the first level?
these are the 3 levels.
Yeah.
So first level is purpose. So
Like why,
when in relation to service, what does that mean to you?
it's like what drives you, like what is the reason you do this?
Anybody else?
I would just say that actual like. The contract and like the specific things that, like, that's what really needs to get done, like.
That would be on number 3 though, but we'll get to it. So masters of service have a clear understanding of why they should be hired and can articulate it to anyone at any time. Think value proposition, again, going back a few slides. Session 4, define your value. That gets back to the value proposition. You got 2 floors and an elevator you're going up, so you got 15 seconds. What are you gonna say in that 15 seconds to earn the business? Essentially, why you? Great service begins with a clear purpose for why somebody should work with you. And for each of you, it could be slightly different. You're focusing on veterans. So as those new standards come in, that's not necessarily gonna be a focus, but that's gonna be a big part of your business. That's where a lot of your branding is gonna be around. For you, it might be somebody different. For Jesse, maybe it's investors, maybe you're commercial, who knows? So you gotta figure out what's my specialty gonna be, knowing I can do other stuff. But what's my specialty? Now that leads again right into value proposition. 10 seconds, maybe 15, it's like a sentence or 2. So take this big bubble of stuff. Condense it down. Like James said, this is probably actually in that value proposition section. He talks about how good of a negotiator he is. That's part, you're hiring me to either get you the most on your listing, negotiate the best deal with my buyer. But he reminds them along the way, and that was kind of eye-opening even for me when he was talking about, like, I remind him along the way, so when I'm working a deal out for my seller, be like, hey, the way I negotiate actually just netted you $2,000 more. Like, not afraid to point it out. So that was, don't be afraid to pat yourself on the back and point that out to your clients. Then we get to fiduciary, and you're kind of hitting on this, Teresa. It's looking out for their best interest, and on that same page at 16.4 at the bottom of there, the right-hand side. If you do this, not the functionary, but the fiduciary side, people will not have problems paying you. So, Josh, last week, you talked about having a listing appointment the weekend prior. And you got all 6%, even though they questioned the lawsuit stuff. Something must have. Something on that list on the right-hand side under fiduciary. They must have felt that from that meeting with you. They feel that from you, and your value propositions there, they have no problem paying you what you're asking. Because they feel like it's an investment at an expense.
So can we ask Josh what that?
I just,
He may not even, I mean, he may just come off like they just don't.
the main thing they wanted to know, after I explained kind of the lawsuit that happened. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to go less than 6%, and I just told them, that I do, that I feel I'm worth 6% because I go above and beyond. And I told him about a past client that I had, a buyer. And every time she tried to go to a house, I mean, she still hasn't got a house yet. But every time something comes on the market, it's like gone or under contract before she can really get to it. So I just took initiative and I go out and I was door knocking on houses. You can say, hey, would you like to sell your house? I got a buyer ready to go, stuff like that. So I was just showing them that.
How did that go for you?
I haven't found anything yet.
Like, were they like, you're crazy to be knocking on doors and asking people to sell their house?
I haven't had anyone get, they just would say no, and sometimes it'd be short. I had a few conversations that were long. But sometimes it was just no and they closed the door. But I never felt bad, nothing felt bad, but I just told them that I went and I did things above and beyond and they said, okay.
Okay, hey, James. You have maybe my favorite door knocking story about, I think it might have been the last time you door knocked and you got the double dip the deal. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing this? Oh, was it? Okay. Do you mind sharing the story?
Big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Associated Churches, I heard was looking for a place. They wanted to buy a retreat for places. So I didn't knock on a lot, but maybe 8 or 10 of them. I knocked on the door. It was like, I want to say it was like 1.25 was the expired. And they opened the door and it was like, it's almost like they called me and told me to come out the door. Timing was right, and, oh no, this is perfect timing, we were, anyway, we ended up buying it. So, you know, it was at 6%, so double dip, but like you guys are just saying, if you go back and, even if it doesn't work out, you tell the client that you're knocking on the doors. Now, they're more likely to send referrals, they're more faithful to you as their realtor.
I hired a hound dog that's doing anything and everything to get me a deal.
Yeah, and in this case, it was the triple whammy, found the right house, but then for them to know that I found it because I was out knocking on doors. But, and I think we talked about this before, but if you're gonna knock on a door this weekend, why not knock on the door in a neighborhood where you have there's some sort of, where you're going to be listing the house. Or the neighborhood you just listed the house. You can tell the sellers you're out looking to see if they know of it. Kind of true, but you're also trying to listen to everything else. But either way, you're just being smarter about the doors that you're not. But knock on doors in Warsaw today. The only benefit is if they call me where I have a buyer and I can strengthen that relationship. And you'll occasionally get, like one of you just said, someone that is only interested in showing. And now you can at least show it to your buyer. You're gonna keep calling that seller, hoping they'll list it in 2 months, 6 months, or a year. But at least you did have one chance to show it to someone. And maybe that worked out. So anyway, but yeah, you just never know. I think if you knock on 100 doors, you're probably gonna get one. Like if it works out, everybody has different numbers.
Mhm.
But occasionally like that, you do it.
Yeah. But if you have your buyer shopping list, and it was a very pointed list of like houses or places he was going to. So I love that, because, I mean, who would be gutsy enough to go to a 1 point something million house and just, let's do this, we got 6%.
They're all the same, too. That's the thing. That seller, I'm telling you, if we could have recorded it, you would have thought, I had a preconceived idea of what the $1 million seller was thinking or how they would have reacted, and and the other ones that weren't interested or timing changed, they were nice about it as well. Well, it just occasionally you do get someone that's shitty, but it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah. Most people I've talked to that go out and door knock, and we used to door knock a lot leading into open houses, so we do the 20 house rule, so wherever our open house was, we'd do the houses to the left, the right, the street next door, all that kind of stuff, and I never had anybody like chase me off their doorstep, you know, it's like grab it and maybe just say, I gotta go, you know, or whatever, but never in a rude. So But, I mean, it's just, again, what are we doing to provide the highest level service? So you being willing to do that. Again, shows our, even if it doesn't pan out, the fact our clients know we did that for them. Just makes them feel good. And again, we do all this stuff on the right side of this list. It's the second word from the bottom. You become irreplaceable. How would that feel?
I had it, you guys talk about how many calls to make each day or each week, I could just have a goal, even if it's 2 doors next week or 1 door, we all have places we're going. Saturday, I'm heading to such and such a place, I'm gonna just pull up an expired list there. For sale by owner, and I'm just gonna knock on 1 door each week or 5, I mean, obviously it'd be more than that, but I think after a little bit, we realize, yeah, I didn't get any listings yet, but no one was mad or yelling at me, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I still say face to face, I would do a face to face. And not immediately. Kids come to my door and knock on the door, or someone knocks on my door, it's totally different than if they're calling it. I'll figure it. You can be more engaged, you can appreciate the show.
I'll tell you something else, my client that I'm looking for a house for right now. She's also mentioned, again, it's just words at this point, but she's mentioned, she's had opportunities, with friends that she knows that offered for her to buy their house. But she brought it to me about commission. And the person that has the house doesn't want to deal with me realtors. But she told me that if she were to buy the house, she'd still pay me the commission just because she likes the work that I'm doing for her. So just making them happy too. When they don't need to pay a commission, she offered too, so.
Yeah.
I just don't get how they do that, like, I had, before I became a realtor, like, you have a small, tiny idea of what they do, but I wouldn't know how to find a title company and all the things that go, like, I would have no idea.
Yeah, we talked about this a few weeks ago that
We're navigating through that.
Yeah.
Unless they're an
most
insurance
of them are. So I went out to coffee last week with my main title person. And she's like, basically in the title world, they're praying that for sale by owners don't pick up steam, because like every time it's a for sale by owner, we get about 50 calls. Because they don't know what they're doing. And then they're like, we're not realtors. We cannot answer these questions. And they keep calling back, try and talk to somebody different. And because they don't know, and we've talked about this before, like, we all have cars, that's how we got here, but we figure out how to change the transmission on it.
No,
If you watch enough YouTube videos and you spent hours and hours, you could, would you want to? No, we could figure out how to do most things. Somebody else has figured out how to change a transmission, could be for sure. We can't do everything. There's only so many hours in a day. You hire the experts to do the expert things. And then you focus on your big things. What are we talking about in boy? Focus on your big rocks. You're focused on the little pebbles in the sand, that whole video that we watched during 6 Personal Perspectives. If you focus on those little things that take up time, where you could be doing something higher level. Would you rather be a master of a few things or just okay at a bunch of things? Our clients are hiring us to be an expert in real estate. To make them feel like their life got easier by hiring us, not more difficult. Like the last deal I closed, we had to line up 3 deals where there's inspection issues on all 3. Didn't know if some deals were staying together, how to make sure the first 2 deals I had to close, those people would not be homeless by not writing up the contracts the right way. Because it was all contingent on that last house closing. That's the one that had the biggest issues, bunch of foundation, $120,000 just in foundation repairs. That's not anything else. They finally got it worked out. It was like that house didn't close. Then we couldn't sell our house. That'd have been the first thing, because then my people had been homeless. And then the people buying that house had to get out of their apartment. So if they committed to getting out of their apartment too soon, that house, they would have been homeless. And if the people in the middle didn't write everything up right and they couldn't close on this house, then they had to sell to us, then they would have been homeless. Like there's all these situations, like everything wasn't down to a T. So me and the other agent, awesome agent, again, going back to the co-op thing, I'll do many deals with her. We basically had whiteboarded, like, all right, how can we write each of these deals to make sure everybody's protected? Luckily, everything closed on the same day. Everybody got what they needed and post-closing possession worked out. Perfect. But it took, 3-ish hours of like just bouncing ideas back and forth to make sure everything was taken care of. That's a great agent on the other side. But my clients had the ultimate faith in me and they're good friends of mine. So even if they weren't, the last thing I want to do is take good friends of mine and be like, so you and your 3 kids, so here's the deal. Probably gonna need to find an apartment. Sorry about that. And they're adopting, they're like in the middle of the adoption process. Now imagine if we gotta get DCS involved, which this is my first deal where DCS had to like say in everything. So I had that right there, because they weren't fully, I don't know the term, so I apologize. They are not fully adopted yet. They're in the process of, I don't know what all goes into that. So if something went wrong, DCS could say, you're not buying that house. It doesn't meet these standards. So we had to work those inspections. So it was just like all these things, and then they couldn't just go get an apartment and now to meet DCS standards and apartments. And they can't just go move into family because DCS gets a say.
I have that background.
Holy
checks.
smokes. What's that?
You have to have background checks for everyone. I used to.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Yeah. I mean, they're just walking through and I was just like, wow. Cause they're like, it's so close to water. So then water safety tests have to be done. I mean, it was like a whole thing. I was like, oh, moly. I thought it was gonna be complex enough. And now we're at it in this like entire dump truck worth of stuff. And I get why they do it. But they just moved in this weekend. They're settled in. The kids are loving it. They got a big old backyard to go play in now. I mean, it worked out. Everybody's happy.
Yeah.
You know, the people we bought from, they wanted some land down in Huntington. So now he can have his camper and not have the HOA yelling at him and do all this stuff. And it's like, so everybody's happy, but it's like that first day when, this is the one I told you guys, day 92, we're one of 2 offers. 92 days in. It's like, really? But I think that's probably ultimately what was, we got it right at asking price, but I think that was part of it is working with this agent, making sure her clients are taken care of. And making sure everybody's got a fair shake and nobody's gonna be in a tough situation. That's an agent you wanna pick. So the other offer may have been for a little bit more. I saved my people money.
That's how I got my house. The guy, I don't know what he was thinking. He had nowhere to live and put his house on the market. And we didn't even offer the highest amount, but he needed like 5 months to move.
Mhm.
And we wrote that in and he's like, okay, if that works. And because we weren't like, you need to get out in 30 days. But luckily we had that, like we didn't have to, it wasn't contingent. We were able to purchase another one, but
Numerous times we've
because we
talked,
needed a place to live.
numerous times at open houses, we've come across people and they come in just frantic. Their agent did not build in those protections, and because that buyer buying the house doesn't have, you guys had the flexibility, but if you had
Yeah.
nowhere to go. You're not trying to be mean, but you gotta go to that seller base. Sorry. I got nowhere to go, like. If I did, I would love to help you, you know? I mean, at least half a dozen, if not more. And you feel bad. And you don't wanna throw their agent under the bus already, like, we don't need to go down that road, because again, maybe it's their brother or something, I don't know, you don't know where that relationship is.
Speaking of that, though. So I don't know what I don't know, so maybe there's something I don't, that you can have me. Who I'm listing right now, my client, he literally will be homeless, because his plan is to use the proceeds to buy like an RV type thing and live in Kentucky.
But you've already talked, like, he's gonna take that and then
Yeah.
he's gotta go buy it. We can't help with the RV purchase.
Yeah.
So that's just gonna be on him.
So there's nothing that I can do to help.
Now, if he
protect-
wanted to go buy a house, we definitely could,
Yeah,
but he can't buy I don't know how buying an RV works. Maybe it's. My buddy used to sell them. I don't know if he didn't do it for very long. He got back in the car world. He's like, this RV people are nuts.
so
You know, so I could connect you with him and you could talk through like, hey, could he put a small down payment now? So like the day of closing, he could come with his proceed check and I could connect you with him if you want to try talking to him. And we could at least go to him with a solution like, man, if you go to he sold at Blue Compass, which is over by you, I think, isn't it? It's on 30,
Okay.
I think. I can't remember where they're at, but he could maybe give you some guidance and be like, man, you walk in, you put X down, you pick out your unit. Come the day after closing or the day of closing, give us a check for the rest. Cause if he gets his proceeds wired, you'd have access to the money right away, or within a few hours if we time closing.
So, yeah,
But on this situation, I mean, we can't help on that. We can try these little things. Again, we could go to him and be like, hey, even though I'm not selling you the RV, I just wanna make sure you're taken care of. So I made a few calls to a couple local RV places, just see how that world works. Again, just make an impression, right? It's like, hey, I'm out here still hustling for you. I'm not making any extra by doing this. Man, if they got any type of unit, pull behinds, the drivable, I don't know all the terms, but
mhm.
the fifth wheel, is what they're called? The drivable units or whatever you want, they pretty much got. I was with the button, they got 70, 80, 90 units on the lot. You could probably find what he wants.
Mhm.
But he also may want to move to Kentucky and just buy it down there. Just take his car. Or take a U-Haul or whatever and pick it up down there so you can just. I'm
He's
living
still-
here
he's
and
still
go buy.
looking for land too, so it's like, cause I had that conversation with him, and it was like, he doesn't know what he wants to buy until he has the money, so.
Yeah, but if he gets his unit, he could go to a campground in
Yeah.
the meantime, you know.
But I just feel like this dude's really gonna have no home.
So here's the only coaching I can give you. If we're just like, sorry, we're gonna sell this and best of luck to you in your future endeavors kind of thing. That's this. We're just turn and burn. We're just getting through the deal. Nothing we can hook him up with somebody down there if he doesn't have somebody to find the actual land. We can definitely connect him with an agent down there. So that could be a conversation to have today, that if you haven't found land yet, and you're not committed to a realtor, could I connect you with a partner of mine down there? And then I'll connect, like I said, my buddy, I used to do RVs, like, just understand he used to do. He may send you to somebody else, but I can give you his phone number.
Yeah.
Now we're taking it to here. Now we're giving him a referral for the land. We're doing some due diligence on the RV side and we call him like, hey, you wanna go pick your unit out? And then there's probably campgrounds not far from where you're going. You can at least post up there. It's got power, it's got water, it's got all the things. Until you find your land, you're taken care of. You got a place to be.
Okay.
Now you're this. Who wouldn't talk about that? You're going above and beyond. And you're talking like 30 minutes of phone calls and that. I mean, we're not talking days and days taking you away from your main activity, right?
Yeah.
It's just making sure he's taken care of. And I just frame it that, hey, I just want to make sure you're taken care of. Once we get this on the market, we go live Thursday, right?
Hopefully the 26th, whatever day that is.
It's, Thursday,
That is Thursday.
Thursday, or Friday. Today's the 22nd.
I got with Harmony, she's hopefully can have it this.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk to somebody before you leave about that. 'Cause that's ridiculous.
What's ridiculous?
But they can't get any cable. Or whatever board you're on.
He plans on using the proceeds to buy an RV and buy land in
I'm
Kentucky.
selling them.
Well, my friend Tom, that's what he does, he sells those, he's got like a home, so I'd love to.
Could you connect the two of
Yeah,
them?
I actually just.
Cause if he's actually in that world, I suppose my buddy is in it for a smidge. That'd be awesome, cause
You're over at Huntington, super nice guy.
I'd appreciate that.
it's what I told, while you're stepped out. I was telling him, make a couple calls, see how financing works, cause his seller may be able to go and just put $500 down right now and lock in his unit.
Mhm.
Get his proceeds wired, get his money 2 hours later and go the day of closing and close out the purchase.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to dig some solutions to them, and then I'll start about a referral for an agent down in Kentucky to buy the land. If we could do that, that'd be,
Okay.
Is this home in Warsaw going live?
Yeah.
What is it? I'm gonna buy
I like how you just like leaned in, you're like, so.
I got the pictures, I
Okay.
can show you, it's over in the Pines.
Alright, so
Okay.
once we're done, you guys can.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
It's like,
I'm like, I have a.
outside this RV
Yeah.
business,
He's gonna do all the deals from tonight.
right, exactly.
Hey.
See, this is why coming to the office matters, you know?
Yeah.
Add one more thing.
Yep.
As you guys are trying to help those people do different things and you're gonna reach out to a friend, it also lets your clients and sphere of influence know, hey, when need a referral or ask for this. I'm helping other people out on here. You know, I help connect people to your business. Hey, can you help out my neighbor or friend over here? And then I think 6 months from now, it's easier. They realize, well, of course, you're always trying to help people out over your business. And so sometimes I think, yeah, should I make that call or help? It's like, well, wait a minute, that's what I do for a living every day. So then, next thing you be surprised, then phone rings 6 months later from that other person that says, oh, I like the way you were helping them grow their business or helping them with the problems, so let me help you.
100%. This goes that brain rattler exercise they gave us on both. This is why it's like 4 pages, just like, now we got an RV dealer.
Yeah.
We got a this, we got a that. That's why we do this, because again, business to business relationships, so. All right, so. Finishing this up. Look at this list on the right. Anything we do. Continuing education. Anticipating needs, interpreting the data. Big picture viewpoint. We've seen so many deals almost or fall apart. Because of people's, they lose the big picture. They get so worried about this outlet over here that the inspector said it's goofy or something about it. Then they're willing to walk away from the whole deal. I'm like, all right, so that outlet repair, $150, let's say. Hire an electrician, $20 for their time or what, who knows? So you're gonna walk away from your earnest money. Gonna spend $400 on an inspection, like probably an appraisal's done. You're out $2-3 grand over $100. Sounds goofy, but we've seen it so many times. It's like they get so focused on this thing. We need to remind them of the big picture. Same thing with the buyers that start getting frustrated. Been looking for 2 months and still not. But we're also talking about where you're gonna be for the next 10 or 20 years. So do you want to just settle? And Aaron Boone talked about this in one of the first sessions of Ignite, where he was basically trying to talk his client out of buying a property, because they're like, you're just trying, or no, it was Desmond, actually. He talked to his clients out of buying things because she was just getting frustrated. So she's like, I'll just take this one. So no, it's like you wanted boom, 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 and it has literally none of these things. You're just settling. And it's $130,000 you're just kind of wasting. That's a great, and he's still working with her to this day. He was honest with her. She didn't like what he had to say at the moment. But that's a great impression. He wasn't just trying to cash it, and he could have used the commission check. I'd say that if he was sitting here and he had admit to it. All of us could use the commission check, right? That's the easy button. That's not always the best thing for our clients. So look through this list. Make how we do the business over here. One of my favorite ones. Right under partner, it says own the result. Or owns the result. The good, the bad, the ugly. We screwed up, fall on the sword. And Stacy, I completely botched this one. I forgot to write in the curtains and the washer dryer is supposed to stay. Here's what I'm going to do to make it right. Now, well, you didn't, again, agents do it all the time. They throw their clients under the bus or throw somebody else under the bus. I screwed up. I apologize. Here's what I'm going to do to make it right. Own it. When things go really well, be like, this is why you hired me. Don't be afraid to shine the light, not an egotistical way. And judgment and intuition. So as you get more and more experience in this business, this will just get more and more natural, just like in anything else. So, all right. So on to dual agency. You always hear me talk about this as you got to play Switzerland. When you're talking to the seller, you're only representing the seller. When you get to your buyer, you're representing the buyer. And I wish Derek was still here. He just closed one. And he's like, it got a little weird in the middle when I'm trying to work on inspection stuff. And I knew the buyer was asking for this, but it's kind of okay with just this. Then I talked to my seller, like they want it all, it does get weird. And remember, our clients can say no. They can say, we're not okay with this. Buyers generally know going into it because they're calling your side. Or they found it on whatever and they see you're the listing agent. More times than not, we'll see the seller say no. Like, hey, I hired you, I'm paying. you to represent me, how can I know I'm getting 100% of you if you're representing both? Valid point.
What would you say to that?
I don't try to convince them otherwise. Okay, it makes you, because I know I'm getting the one side. If I feel like, I will take that back. If I feel like it's a very loose, like just kind of just kind of feeling weird about it a little bit, I might push a little bit and be like, hey, you know, I will represent you as best as I can, but I will be representing the buyer as best as I can for them as well. But if it does make you uncomfortable, I can refer you to somebody else. I generally don't. And the reason is if something goes weird in the middle, well, that, or they feel like you're pushing a little bit more for this. So I'm just like, you know, if they're not comfortable, I'm not gonna push the matter.
And do you just, when you do that, you do get the opportunity and they let you do that, do you just, like, give both, all the opportunities to both, like the good and the bad?
Yeah, so you're negotiating the deal.
Right.
When you're talking to the buyer, you're just focused on the buyer. When I take your offer to my seller, I'm just focused, here's the merits of this offer. Just like if Jesse was your buyer's agent, sent me the offer, I'd be talking to him just the same. But that gets tough. Cause you may have told me stuff I gotta keep out of our conversation. But in the back of my mind, I might know, hey, you're willing to go 50,000 more. But it's been on the market 4 months, you're just kicking the tires on a low ball offer. That does get a little tough to keep those, I don't wanna say loyalties, but keeping the conversation geared towards helping each of you. And there's some agents that just won't do it. They're just like, I just don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah.
Great.
Are they usually open to going with another agent in your brokerage?
Cause they feel like it's their own representation. I've never seen anybody say no to that, but. You know, cause remember the seller's already committed to you. They can't get out of that. But they can say no to the buyer.
I would think usually the buyers, they want that house, so they want it to go quick, don't, like, that's kind of the position we were in, so it was like, whoever can get the deal done, like.
Mhm.
And it was the listing agent,
Yeah.
because my agent, he was going through something, I found out, but didn't return my calls or anything, and then she got to sell her other house that was like 350,000.
Is there a hierarchy on which one you work with if the seller decides no?
Well, if you're under contract with the seller, you have that contract first.
Cause like in my case, I have the buyer, I've been working with the buyer, if the seller's not, like if this deal here, the seller's not okay, but he is. But say he's not, do I still take his listing or do I still work with the buyer I've been working with for months?
It's up to you. There's no right or wrong. It's who do you prefer?
Cause it's like,
But again, go back to last week's session? Listings give you more dollars per hour.
Yeah.
So you can hand off every single buyer that comes in from those sign calls. So statistically speaking, listings give you more dollars per hour. So there's no right or wrong. You gotta just pick what you're more comfortable with. Or maybe it is like, I like this client better than this client. I feel like we're just a better fit. So I'm gonna work with them.
Hey Brian,
Yeah.
can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, this is Aaron.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it's like sometimes sometimes you actually can have a buyer first, you know, in case like that, because you might have been working with that buyer for a while and then pick up that listing.
That's true. Yeah, so if you have them under buyer agency agreement first, before your listing
Yeah.
comes up. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That,
but it's typically, it is typically, I mean, at least the ones I've done, it's typically a good win-win situation because you're privy to a lot of the information, you know, from your seller,
Mhm.
you know, that you wouldn't have unless you were the listing agent, you know, and that obviously helps your buyer. And I mean, and I feel like there's a line of transparency that you can, I guess, cross in a sense, but not cross, if you know what I mean, you know,
Mhm.
that make it advantageous for both.
That's very true. So I didn't think about it in that fashion. We could have the buyer first. So,
Well,
You're gonna be under contract with both, so then it would just be a matter of. the
again,
buyer-
both of them have
Yeah.
to sign off on it, yeah.
I guess in that matter, you wouldn't have to leave, it just means that that deal won't happen with you, like.
But if they
you can
really
still-
want the house and you only can represent one client, then you gotta decide which one you wanna work with.
and
Because theoretically, your commission will be the same. So if it's the house for this dollar amount, you're getting 3% either way. So I would generally keep the listing versus the buyer, but
This may be in the weeds. If that were to happen, would you do like a referral fee and then?
That was my
someone-
question.
Yeah.
too.
Okay,
I would. Cause the client, that's irrelevant to the client, they wouldn't need to know.
yeah, okay.
If you wanted to be full disclosure, you could tell them. If they wanted to, I've never seen where somebody says they don't want it to be somebody at your brokerage, but even if they did, you could call a great agent that you did a deal with at a different brokerage and still get a referral fee.
That's easy for us because there are no other KW
Yeah,
agents in our
very true, very
area. No problem.
So,
We got like 7.
Yeah.
okay,
Leverage class coming up?
what's that?
Leverage class, isn't that today?
Tomorrow.
Consider it for Ignite if you want.
It's good for you.
Hey, when you're early, you're on time.
Is that, is it gonna be a Zoom for that tomorrow?
I have said no idea. You could ask Isaac on that. When we're done. All right, so getting to setting expectations. This is purely up to you. But it's not necessarily your expectations. It could be your client's expectations, but you have to know the right questions to ask. How often do you expect to hear from me, Mr. and Mrs. Client? How do you want me to communicate a new listing that might match what you're looking for? They're setting the expectation, but you're asking the right questions to get that information. But also tell them, and we talked about this in bold, and I love this. You say, call me anytime, and they call you at 10 PM. Don't be mad. My office hours are 8 to 8. Outside of that, I'll get back to you tomorrow. 'Cause if you send me a house after 8 PM, we're not seeing it tonight anyway. I can reply to that. And this is where it's based on the client. So Jermira, I wish she was here, she works third shift. You call her at 10 o'clock in the morning, she may want to kill you. Cause she just got off work like 3 hours ago. Call her at 4 in the afternoon. I don't know what, I'm just talking general third shift. By then she's up, she's, that's her morning. Having that understanding with your clients. Finding out how they want to communicate things like this.
On the listing of the presentation I was at before. Every time I try, I guess to set or ask them the expectations. It just kept saying they don't know, so I just ended up telling them how much.
That's fine, and you may get that, I mean, but again, you're at least asking, and if they
Yeah.
come back, be like, well, I don't want it done this way, why, again, not saying it disrespectfully, but that's why I asked those questions in our initial meeting. Again, sometimes there's so many things going on. They don't know up from down kind of thing. We gotta be okay with that, we gotta be able to operate in that, and then you do tell them that's how it's gonna be. But we at least ask them first. We've had where clients, like we go back to the beginning of the session, you're my client, I give you A, B, C, and D, merits of both. Here's what I recommend, and I'm like, what do you wanna do? And you're like, oh, you just pick whatever's best. And no matter what I do, I could offer to pay you $50 to pick a decision, you're like, nah, you pick. But at the end of the day, I can say, I gave you all the options, gave you the merits, I'm gonna give you the one I recommended. I know without a doubt, I gave you all the options to do, all the merits, all the drawbacks, everything. My goal at the end of the day is to be able to rest easy.
I didn't offer him $50, but I definitely throughout the presentation, I reiterate questions. And it was just like, I don't.
In those situations, don't be afraid to do a follow-up email. John and Jane, thanks so much for sitting down today, as we talked about, and then just recap. I'll, reach out 2 to 3 times a week. When a new home pops up, I'll send you a via text message. You'll be getting safe search results from me as they pop up. Don't be afraid to hit that 4 or 5 highlights or whatever it happens to be. And now it's at least in writing as well. But now we're in the reviewing the transaction process. Read the room on this one. So again, this is about setting the expectation. With the first time home buyer, I generally don't go past finding your new home. Because all that stuff after that, look how much is after find your new home on that list. There's a lot. That can be overwhelming if you've never gone through this process. If your clients have done this 3 or 4 times, don't be afraid to go through this whole thing. They know most of it already, so you can hit the highlights. But the first time home buyer, by the time you get halfway through how all this stuff works, you've lost them. They're probably feeling so overwhelmed. They can actually backfire where they change their minds. So part of this setting the expectation, this is what I'm gonna be doing at each of these steps to make your life easier. And don't be afraid, I've sent it to most of you probably, but there's a great roadmap we had made up that has kind of a version of this, kind of looks like a Candyland board. That is great for your presentations, inside the buyer's presentations and seller presentation guides and designs. There's great guides inside of there as well, that show all of these steps.
Is the one that you've sent to most of us one that you've tailored?
I mean, it's just, it makes it bite-sized. It's like, here's the get pre-approved. Here's 2 bullet points about that. Find a home, here's 2 bullet points about it. Obviously, there's way more, but it makes it just bite-sized things that they can digest really easy. Set time expectations. This is a biggie. All right, if we don't find you a home in the 90-day window you got, what's our plan? Again, we don't want to see you settling. This is what's in it for our client. So we don't find a house in 90 days, your lease is up, what's the plan? They may not have an answer. Try to work out a month-to-month deal, try to work out maybe a 3-month window. Try to keep them from signing a year lease, because if they sign a year lease, you just did this 90-day work to just start it back up in about 9 months. Set those expectations. We're getting to the summertime. A lot of our sellers might be like, we need to be in the new home before school starts. We don't want to be doing this during the school year. Okay, on the off chance this goes into it, again, we're talking about one move every so many years. Would you guys be willing to stay in the game? If we don't have a house. Again, I don't want to see you settle just to say you got it done in this time.
Do you see some of your buyers that are like, okay, like now this event's coming up, like Brian will call you again in a few months and start looking and then.
Some people start, and this is where understanding how timelines work. Renters are the worst ones. They think if their lease is up August 31st, they should start looking like mid-July. It's like, no, should be looking in May. But so many of them are just like, it won't take that long to find a house. They've never done it. They don't know.
Oh my goodness.
But we've seen it, then that 2-3 weeks go by, they haven't found anything, the extensions in front of them, they just sign it, they're like, this is the easy button. But just sign it. This is where understanding. And hey, if there's 1 month, you got a mortgage payment, a lease payment, or rent payment, are you okay with that? Cause that could buy us a little bit more time, that could buy us another 30 to 45 days.
So what would you say, 4 months, if you're a
So
renter?
let's kind of walk through this. So if you're a renter and you're my client, we're in our buyer consultation, you say, my lease is up August 31st, okay? So your last payment's when? August 1st, right? Okay. So if we start looking end of June and we find a house day 1, I would make my closing for us August like 2nd or something. Why would I do that?
That way if something fell through, they didn't.
It's about the first mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So if we close in August, our first payment's not September 1st, it's October 1st. Now let's take that back 1 step further. If we close sometime in May, and I can work out where we close in July. Again, if we get to the first of that next month, if we close 1st of July, when's our first mortgage payment due? September 1st.
Is that for everyone? Because I remember when we bought our house, it was like 6 weeks and it was due, like it was,
And it always leapfrogs the month. So if you close the 29th of a month,
that's what it was.
so you close in the middle of the month,
It was like the very last day of July
yeah, that's why.
and then it was due September
Yeah.
1st. So that's,
So it always leapfrogs a month.
oh, okay.
So now we're already in May. And we know it takes 30 to 45 days to find a house. So we should be starting the end of April, early May.
So for, but I mean, just as a generality. Like
That
4
is the
months.
general, yeah,
So
yeah,
4 months.
right. But then I'm gonna ask you, all right, let's say we start late, April, early May, we find a house right away, we got closed in June. The only way this house works out is we close sometime in June. Our first payment's gonna be August first. Also, our rent payment's gonna be due August first. Are we okay with that financially? It's a lot of money. Go back to fiduciary, big picture. All right, that sucks for that 1 month. Plenty of time to save up. Do you wanna miss out on the perfect home? Cause we don't wanna have 2 payments.
For the one.
No right or wrong, I just want my clients to look at it that way. So we went from them wanting to start in July, hey, we're already talking, let's start in April. The other thing I tell my renters is make best friends with the people at the front desk. Cause if they got people waiting for your unit, they might let you out early with a small penalty. I'm working on one now, their lease isn't up till December 20th. And we're looking now. Cause they got a payoff amount from the front desk that's favorable. So if we find them the right house, but if we don't, we got like months and months to find it. And they're not settling for just anything. At the end of your meetings, your initial meetings with buyers and sellers, I like to have I like to do it on a letterhead with all my info, because again, if that's the piece of paper that goes to the fridge. But hey, we're gonna list your house this day, photographs this day, blah, blah, blah. With buyers, hey, we're gonna be doing this, and then this is how it works, like, once we write an offer, earnest money's due in 3 days, in 14 days, we gotta get our inspections. Like, have a nice written list that just kind of outlines your timeframes. So there's no surprises. Set document expectations. Some clients want to go line by line through a contract, that's fine, there's some that could care less, but the big one, especially going forward, is gonna be a buyer agency agreement. So keep coming to all the trainings about that. Because that's one in the initial meetings we should be getting signed with our buyers.
Are the actual buyer agency agreement document, are they changing in July at all, or just the standard?
Lee said he doesn't think so, because they don't generally change in the middle of the month, but there's not been a definitive yes or no. Theoretically, the listing contract should change too, because the BAC line should come off. He's not too sure. So every training we got, at least get on them via Zoom, because as the next few months go by, there's probably gonna be a lot of changes. We know they're happening. We know no matter what the DOJ does, Indiana's making it okay to offer 0, remove that line, and BAC or buyer agency agreements are mandatory. So no matter what happens nationwide.
We had a K board meeting last week, and somebody from IAR came and was talking about the buyer agency agreements. And it was really interesting. I had not thought of this piece of it. So in Indiana, she works like Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin, and she was saying it's actually really fantastic to be an agent in Indiana. Because in Illinois, they don't have any like set agreement for a buyer agency agreement. And there are, like in Indiana, she said, there are about 33,000 realtors and about 9,000 that are not a part of NAR. And so with the settlement, basically the non-NAR members wouldn't have to have a signed buyer agency agreement. And then looking at that would give them a significant advantage over anyone that is a NAR member, because we have to have that agreement. So in seeing that basically that's why they were able to get that signed by Governor Holcomb. They were talking about their good relationship and lobbying and all of that, but that was something I hadn't thought of, that obviously going to make it a level playing field for everybody. So
Yep.
that was kind of different.
Again, we're professionals, asking to be paid is not anything. The free market's gonna work. It's gonna settle out however it settles out. And we got a lot of solutions around it, from asking for concessions to hopefully lenders being able to add it into the loans and things like that. So, again, we already talked about this a little bit. Set the communication expectations. How often are they expecting to hear from you? And vice versa. Okay. This is the big one. This is what we were talking about on all these deals a while ago. That got us into the RV conversation. Talk through all the contingencies. The big ones being, do they need a sell to buy? Are they gonna buy first? Make sure our clients are not homeless. But what other contingencies are built into the offers?
inspection, appraisal, financing.
Okay, that's the three. So I'm working with one right now. We close in a couple weeks. He's out of California. So their purchase agreement, 16 pages, 8 or 9 of them are just disclosures. He's asking me all these questions. I'm like, he's like, yeah, we gotta write all these into the contracts. I was like, oh, they're just built into ours. Like, I mean, you just automatically get a financing thing. And I explained it, hey, if your financing gets declined, you get your earnest money back, no questions asked. Inspection, blah, 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 appraisal, blah, blah, blah. So, he's like, oh, like, here's a 16 pages, and it's not that simple. Like, you know, that would drive me nuts. You know, but all these things are already built in to protect the buyers as much as possible. Those are the big ones to cover. Make sure they're not homeless. So if it's a buyer, are they gonna get out of their apartment? Like, make sure you work through these timelines and contingencies. The big one though is like if our sellers have to sell to buy, if that deal they're buying is falling apart, that they're not forced to sell their house and things like this. So as these situations come up, don't be afraid to call me or call Lee, and we'll kind of, and like I said, with what I did with that other agent, kind of whiteboard these things to make sure we have all our dates and all the built-in protections. We could sit here for half a day just going through all the ways this could, because there's so many factors out play. Just make sure you understand their situation and what they're able to do and what they're not able to do. This is a big one, and not because of the lawsuit, but because interest rates. We're starting to see the market soften a little bit, but interest rates they just keep creeping up. And then you keep hearing the news like, hey, in the next few months, they're probably going to drop back down. So then people, I think, are holding off a little bit. So have an understanding of what the Fed's doing for rate. Have a great lender partner that you can check in with. Nate, right now, I'd say at least once a week. What are they hearing about the rates? What are the rates doing right now? What can you tell me? What's the forecast? Again, they get all these projections, what the Fed's gonna do and things like that, so. And again, Safe Search is your consumer facing app, which we're gonna set a class for that at some point. On how to use the KW consumer facing app at a high level, customizing your guide, and then also using the homes.com app. Because we might get a call. I cannot remember the street, but there's a guy named Jesse at KW. He had a sign in the yard. I might need like on homes.com, you can pull up an agent directory and all the houses you have listed. You'll be amazed how many times you get that call. Can't remember anything else. I just remember your smiling face on the sign kind of thing. So. Then on top of not forgetting to call your people. So tasks, notes, smart plans, all that you can do inside of there. Again, it's about staying top of mind. This will help you do that.
Do you know when that class will be?
No, we just talked about in the ALC Tech Committee, so we're trying to schedule for sometime in May. But we have Red Day, we have Memorial Day weekend, we already got other trainings, so it's like, I also don't want to wait till June, and we're going to schedule another RPR class, kind of like a second level RPR class that Michael will teach. So again, all these like non-MLS, non-KW things we want to make sure you guys can use.
What's RPR?
It's built into Paragon. What does it stand for?
Yeah, realtors property resource.
There you go. So you can do comps in there. It gives you a quick snapshot. I don't use it very often. Vandergrift loves it. And he does it at a very high level. So he taught a class not too long ago. But it can give you a lot of information. It's updated quite often.
Too much stuff to know.
Yeah.
I know this.
It's really good though.
It is.
Nice, yeah.
It is.
You make other class laid out,
Yeah.
and I also like
All
their,
that stuff.
it tells you like who owns it, where owns not used to,
Yeah.
RPR does.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. A lot of people, I need to get better at it. I'm just so used to using the MLS and the tax card site. So I'm probably adding way more steps than I need to. But there's a lot of people I've been using RPR with a lot of success. And like Brittany said, like just the way it's laid out, like Michael showed me one of his, I was like, it is pretty slick.
Like it knows that I live, like my home is here, so it knows that's where I live. But you can,
So is this is like a non-official MLS?
No, it's part of your MLS dues.
Yeah,
It's, and you log in through Paragon.
you only have access as a realtor member, so.
So is it just double duty on what the MLS already has?
It's a simplistic version, like you can't schedule showings through there, you
Yeah.
can't read the info. This is like a summary view, I guess, like you wanna do a comparable, you're listing 123 Main Street, you can do a really quick comparable in there.
Yeah.
Like neighborhood
So when
reports.
you log into Upstar and it gives you all those little icons, it's one of the icons in there.
What is it, neighborhood
RPR,
RPR?
it looks like,
When you log into Upstar next time, just look at all those icons, there's about like a dozen of them or so. And it'll just say does it say RPR? I think it just says RPR.
Is that pretty easy to use?
yeah, I really like it. You can do like pretty customizable, like CMAs on the fly. It look really nice.
And like email or text them
Yeah, I mean,
people or something?
they can be like 80 pages, which I feel like is a lot, and way too much, but I mean, they have like from one sheet to.
Yeah, I was gonna say dwindle it down.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They were just doing a series of webinars too with people from RPR,
Yeah.
showing you how to use it.
Mhm.
You can do like neighborhood stuff if you like wanna farm a certain neighborhood and just give them stats about that area. There's a lot to do. Yeah, I feel like I don't use it at all.
I mean, to your point, there's so many apps, so many things you can use. And that's why we're like on the tech committee, we're trying to dwindle it down a little bit. But at the end of the day, everybody does things so differently. We're also trying not to do that too much. So it's kind of this weird line we're trying to walk that she may prefer RPR. I may just do it through the MLS. You may prefer doing it a different way.
It also has like your
Just-
listing. I'm just thinking if you have listed, like.
With everything in the world I'm doing, I'm learning other things, it's gonna,
Yeah.
so that's something that I'll put in my back pocket for later.
Yeah.
I got too much going on.
Right. So, all right, so 3 steps to gaining referrals. You're providing value. Think of the bold script, you're asking for help. And then reward the activities. So somebody sends you a referral, I always say, I like to send something small. Maybe a $5 gift card for a Starbucks or something like, hey, let me buy you a cup of coffee to say thanks. Now that closes, I might send something bigger, or I will send something bigger. All great things, okay? So, like, keep that in mind. This is how you get ongoing referrals. But why it's something small, you don't want people sending you stuff all the time, just trying to get something big out of you, you know, so that's where just do something small, say thank you. And they're also not in control of if that deal closes, that then falls on your shoulders to close the deal. Then don't forget about reviews. There's so many good sites out there to get reviews on, but I'd focus on Zillow, homes.com, realtor.com, Google My Business. Unfortunately, there's not one good thing, and now your My KW site also has your website. And promote the reviews as well. So now we're getting to success with buyers. Buyers are much easier than sellers. Because they're looking for somebody who's gonna help them find the right home to purchase, 52%. Understanding their needs, getting them set up on a safe search. Be the one that communicates with them. Don't just wait for them to text you a link to a house, because at some point they're gonna be like, we're doing all the work. What are you really doing? And you add in, help negotiate the terms of the sale, right there, 65 out of the 100%. You can do those 2 things really well. And if you add in that extra 11%, which I don't know why it's not just a bigger section, help with price negotiations, which right now is more and more of a thing. Houses are not necessarily flying out the market. So you add that in there. You got almost 3/4 of that pie with stuff that we can definitely help with. But it all starts here, buyer's needs analysis. How big of a house do we need? So who's all gonna be living here? What are the non-negotiables? So on Wednesday, Scott is leading a class on this. I do not know if Rocky's coming, but Scott is. I think you're helping him. Are you? That's right. Maybe not. I
I'll
don't
be
know.
here.
You'll be here? Okay.
Yeah,
I thought they said you were helping him, but maybe it was a different Stacy. Is
maybe,
there another Stacy?
I don't know what, but.
I don't know.
Mhm.
So must not be you if you're saying, I don't know anything about, but he's gonna go through how to get to these non-negotiables. What has to be in the house?
I got a template from Rocky and that's
Yeah.
what I use for all my buyers
Mhm.
and it's wonderful.
Halfway down this list, it may seem goofy, but for some people it does matter. Does the age of the house matter? So on this, it's saying, do you have a preference for the year the house is built? Some people do. And that's fine. Some people don't want older houses, so your house that you have listed is 100-something years old or close to you. It comes with its own set of things. Brand new house has its own set of things too, so. Most people by and large I've come across don't really care. They want more of an area, and then inside of that kind of takes care of the age of the house. And another big one, do you want it move-in condition? Or do you mind doing some work to it? Why does that matter?
Have a lot of options.
Matter.
Yeah,
No,
that's,
Doesn't matter on the type of loan.
yeah.
Because if it needs a lot of work, FHA and VA are pretty much off the table. It's gonna have to cash or conventional. We get a pre-approval letter and all they can get approved for is FHA. They may want this. I wanna do all the work. Well, your lender's saying, no. Now we gotta have a tough conversation here. What are our options? Again, talking to the lender, seek first to understand, right? Like, hey, what can we do? This is what they're telling me they wanna do. You approved them for this. Are there any options? The answer may be no. The answer may be yes, but we want to understand. Any questions on this? But it all starts with this great buyer consultation. Comes down to this. Help them make the right decision. The way I look at this could be for the good or it could be for the not so good. We help them make the wrong decision. Could be for the worst. And we hit on this a little bit ago. The tough conversations are what we're being paid to do. These are your fiduciary conversations. If everything was easy, we wouldn't be paid like we are. Some agents shy away from the tough conversations. We got to barrel into them. Let's get all our options. Let's think about things. And let's think how to frame it to our clients. Not that we're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, but how should we frame this to our clients? They will respect you for going into these conversations and being purely honest with them.
Have you ever had a mistake turn out to be something good?
No.
Like you forgot to do something or something?
Maybe.
Well, sometimes you might have forget, you
No,
might,
I get what you're saying, but yeah, no,
and then it turns out the person buying the house,
not anything that comes to mind.
So I use like my own experiences sometimes, especially with like first time buyers. So we were gonna buy a house in Fort Wayne. We were basically first time. And like it got cut on appraisal and then there were pretty significant things with the inspection. The sellers, they didn't want to agree to the difference in the appraised price, so we cut our losses and walked. But then we ended up finding the perfect house. And we thought that the house that, we went under contract was the perfect house, but obviously we know that there's a lot of houses for every buyer. And so, we were like, we fell in love, we were doing all the things, and then all of a sudden, it got cut by, I don't know, $5,000 or $7,000. We're not paying that difference, the sellers, so we just went our separate ways, and then within a couple of weeks, we were under contract on the perfect house. So, and a lot of times I just use my own, I've had an appraisal cut before, and we've had to, part ways and, do a mutual release, and it sucks, but I just kind of try to keep it positive, there are more houses, things, there's not much we can do in that instance, so.
There's really just one house out there that will fit the bill, right?
Yeah, so it's
But yeah, no, it's generally, I make a mistake. It's not shown to be a positive thing.
That thing.
I wish, but no.
You're like, hey, I don't even have to tell nobody because it was worked out. I could tell him I planned it that way the whole time.
Right. All right, so. Getting to this next one. We've talked about this a lot lately. Again, this is what Wednesday's class is gonna be about. If the clients say it has to have these things and they keep sending houses without it. Go back to this, have that tough conversation, like. It doesn't make sense to go see this house because it doesn't match these things, but you keep sending me houses that have this, are we changing our criteria? So have that tough conversation. And this is in your best interest, but more importantly, in your buyer's best interest. Show only the best properties for your buyer. We show them house after house that we know is not gonna be a match. They're gonna get burned out, and they may pull the plug on the search. Have the information. Know what you're talking about. Know the major details of the house. And again, you don't have to memorize them. Have it printed out though, have it with you so you know where to go to. Mark properties on a map, I feel like that's a little bit of an older statement there, because most people will have that, but again, location to work, proximity to work. Don't just assume our clients did that. If they want to be within 30 minutes of work and they send you an address, don't be afraid to double check that. Hey, this is looking like it's about 45 minutes from your work. I know we wanted to be inside 30 minutes. How are we feeling about that? The distance one, people are a little bit more flexible on, because it's like, man, if in this bubble, we're not finding the right house. Slightly outside of that, might be a few more minutes driving. But it's the perfect house and it's ready now. They may be a little bit more flexible on that, as opposed to, we wanted 4 bedrooms, we'll settle for 3. They'll end up hating that 3 bedrooms. If it's like 10 extra minutes of driving.
My wife doesn't look at time at all. She tells me she wants to be 30 minutes from work, and every house she shows me half the time is like 45, 50
Yeah,
minutes out.
exactly.
And then I bring it up and she's like, oh, never mind.
And then number 6 on this, and I've talked to most of you about this. Point out the issues and concerns with the house. None of you drive a white Cadillac, do you?
Oh, no, no.
So. You could save yourself a ton of time, ton of work. If we see a potential issue, even though it's a deal breaker, would you rather get 3 weeks into this, 4 weeks into this, and then it fall apart, or just be honest now? And it just be done. Like the people I'm showing houses to now, that I told you their lease isn't up till December. We saw a house where the bedroom was 12 by 11. They're like, our king bed would barely fit in here, let alone a dresser, a nightstand. So every house they send me now, first thing I look at is that primary bedroom. Is it bigger than that? And we've scratched a couple houses off like, hey, because that's not information on most websites, like the room size is. So I'm like, hey, the primary bedrooms only, whatever. You know, I don't kind of I think we've decided like 15 by 13 is kind of like the minimum. So if it doesn't match that, it's not good.
Very big primary bedroom, 12 by 11.
Yeah. That was an older home, it was built in the 70s, you know, back in the day, like, you know, I don't know what, but so. This is a big one. There's too many times people just unlock the door and turn their clients loose. Interact with the clients. Have information that you can, and print out the detail sheet, the disclosures, the utility information, whatever it happens to be. Hand it to them. Point stuff out. At the end of the house, what do you love and what's maybe not so great about this house? How are we feeling about this house? Ask that before you leave. Be aware of recording devices. Do not stand right by the front door if there's a Ring doorbell. If you feel like there's a lot of stuff around, wait till you get to the next place.
Clients are pretty unaware of that, from what I've found. Anytime anybody wants to start like talking price or offers, I'm like, how about we, like, if it's not raining or snowing, how about we step outside? How about we not do that in the house? And then everybody has a camera and it's supposed to be disclosed, but a lot of people don't think about it.
Most people do
So
not.
it's better for everyone's interest if we just have a conversation outside, and then it's always like, oh my God, you thought of that. Yeah.
Wasn't it you had a client or somebody and they were like an intercom, they're like, do you think they know that we're listening? And the realtor was like, yeah, we didn't know you're listening.
No, it wasn't me, but that's funny.
Here.
Scott Pressler's favorite saying is, we are not tour guides. So our job is to sell the houses, not show them. This is now counterintuitive to what we've been talking about. But we're not just gonna show houses for the sake of showing houses, it's gotta match what you're looking for. We're not trying to force you into the wrong house, but we're also not wasting our time showing you houses that have zero chance of being the house. And this is something you should dive into on your initial consultation. Why buyers hesitate, they're afraid to commit. Don't be afraid to just ask them like, hey, if we find the right house, you know, are we ready to pass? They don't like some minor detail of the home. This is where you gotta be creative, like, oh, you don't like whatever. Here's some solutions. How do we feel about those potential solutions? We don't like the flooring throughout the main level of the house. Great. What if we worked in a flooring allowance? In our office, would that make you feel better? They haven't seen enough homes. If they knew they wanted this and it matches all these boxes, again, this is where the big picture stuff comes in. We don't have to see 50 homes to make sure this is the right one. This one will probably be gone by the time we see the rest of the homes. This checks every box. Why are we not? Go back to number one. Why are we afraid to commit? They need to sleep on it and or get the opinion of a trusted advisor. This would be a great question for your first-time home buyers. Besides you or the two of you, are we gonna be getting the opinion or advice of somebody else, like parents, or know who your audience is?
How do you, deal with that? Because I feel like, or I've heard like a lot of people are bringing their parents, and then a lot of like realtors are like, your realtors are not, or your parents are inspectors, like they come in and find like 50 different things.
Mhm.
Like, how do you? 'Cause I'm
So
sure you
that's
have
what the
parents
inspect,
that-
100%. That's what the inspection's for. You know, we'll address that in the inspection phase. I've not had too bad of parents, luckily, but they do try to play the inspector. You know, so again, you're trying to make them feel comfortable. It's the first house their kids are buying. The biggest one that I get is, well, 1980, whatever, when we bought our first house, well, cars were also like $2,000. And they're not
Just make
anymore.
that $15,000.
Exactly.
But when we lived there before.
I
So,
posted that one when I first was there. It was like a listing in the paper for a house, it was like $7,000.
Yeah, right.
I was like,
yeah,
1901 or something,
right.
$7,000.
So now we're gonna flip to the other side of transaction, sellers. Just like before. Be of help. If you look at just the be of help, that's 3/4 of this graph. That should not be earth-shattering information. Price the house rate. Understand their time frame, and understand what stays with the home. We just had one in the coaching program that sold with everything inside the house. Mine is like 2 chairs or something. Literally entire house full of furniture,
You put that on like, you put that
personal property.
property.
Or actually, this one they just did on the offer because it was cash. Yeah. But the lender does not want to see personal property staying with the house, so there's a personal property addendum you should use. Well, understand with your clients. And please, on the first page of the purchase agreement, same things on the first page of the listing contract, understand what's already connected. Read that section, take a copy of the listing contract with you if you want, and the purchase agreement, and show your clients. Curtain rods stay, curtains don't, wall mounts stay, TVs don't, water softeners. All these things are anchored into the house. The ones people get weird about are pergolas. So they might be screwed into the concrete on the house, like the patio, so they don't blow away. That should stay with the house. It's fine if they don't want it, you're gonna save yourself a lot of arguing. If you get that out of it. Just have those conversations up front. What do we think sellers control? Price and condition. They're gonna agree with you on the price, or they're not. That's why when I teach you guys listing presentations, it's like, have that after your walkthrough and you get down into a price, have that conversation now. Because if we don't agree on price, really nothing else matters. Condition, they 100% control condition. So if you're on top dollar, you better get cleaning, you better get fixing. Knowing that we cannot guarantee top dollar if they do these things, and you and I just had this conversation. We cannot guarantee if they put $5,000 into XYZ that they're gonna get 10,000 more. So they gotta be okay, if they put 5,000 in, they might only make $2,000. on a $5,000 investment. We don't know. But we do know, like, these things statistically will help you get more for your value. Do not put a guarantee on any of that. You're just setting yourself up for not fun conversations, which leads us to this. Odors from pets, smoking, cluttered conditions. Derek's working on a listing now, there's just stuff everywhere. He's like, the house is probably a tear down at this point, because it's just so dilapidated.
The entire time. When I was in the listing presentation, or like when I had the photographers over, like in my head the whole time, I'm just thinking. Oh, look,
Mhm.
the house looks so much better after it got cleaned, but before it did. I don't want to offend these people, but it was cluttered.
So, personalized decor. The one that I had, this was a few years ago. Ginormous Confederate flag in the garage, I'm like, you may wanna take that down, so that may rub some people the wrong way, and they refused, I was like, all right. That you do you kind of thing, but. I'm not saying it's my thing, you know what I mean, but, yeah, it's. People have their perceptions of it, they walk around their garage and the whole back wall is essentially a ginormous Confederate flag. They might be like, I don't wanna buy from these people. Hey, we're dancing over there?
All I got to
Okay. Sellers leaving for showings, it might make the buyers, potential buyers just feel more comfortable. Not having the sellers there. Sometimes that's not possible, especially like elderly sellers that have a hard time. You know, leaving or whatnot,
How do you deal with that? Like,
just let people know, like,
like if it's trying to step out of the house, like on the back.
the elderly ones try to talk to everybody, cause of.
Yeah.
But I just had one where
It's like, you know,
you just give everybody a heads up, like the one I just sold, my last listing I sold. She worked for Parkview and works from home, so she has to be on her computer 8:45 to 4:30. She was fine with showings during the day, so we just put in age marks and showing time, if you're showing between this time and this time, she'll be in this room. One, she has to be on her computer, but two, there's patient, whatever, so she has to be there, make sure nobody messes with them. So we just disclosed it, so sometimes it's irrelevant, so illegal activities, I think that speaks for itself. Guns in the house, cash, jewelry, other expensive items, so we always tell people, put those either in a safe or put them away. Much as we don't trust everybody's looking for the right reasons, they might see something in a picture like a jewelry box. Like, if I set up a showing. I can maybe swipe something. Same thing for open houses, you know, because again, not. With showings, we're generally with their clients' open houses, that people just, it's a free for all. So these are tough conversations out with their seller. Again, you're not trying to make them feel uneasy about people coming in.
how would you have or how have you had a conversation with someone who has like a smelly house, like whether it just be like.
The worst one I had, these people probably are like 3-pack a day smokers. I mean, you could squeegee tar off the wall. I mean, it was literally like stained and I was like, look, and they're like, it doesn't smell that bad. I'm like, I wear specific clothes to this appointment every time, because I've done 3 deals with these people and they smoke in every single house. And they want top dollar. I'm like, you're not gonna get it. So they always start for top dollar, then they end up selling, you know, where we're supposed to be.
How do you do that without hurting their feelings, like, or.
Just be like, hey, I understand this may not be a big deal to you, but most buyers are gonna have an issue with smoke. I'm just honest with them. So then I go through solutions, like we might have to get them an allowance for deep cleaning, ozone machine, painting, carpet cleaning, or flooring allowance. You know, a lot of it will leave once the furniture leaves. But there's gonna be lingering behind.
What if it's just like a smelly house? Like, you can't be like, you guys are just stinky people, like,
I've thankfully never had that, where it's that bad. But, it would not be a fun conversation.
right,
Maybe you don't bring up the fact that it's smelly, you just add in the statistics, even if you have to make your own statistics of certain smells that allow them to keep that.
make up.
Well, like casinos do it, they get you in there and they keep you in there with the air and the lighting and all that.
I'm not saying anything, but like BO is just really down there on.
So, but I mean, like, if, instead of like specifically talking about the smell, you're just like, hey, statistics show that these smells are, I don't know, figure out how to get those smells in there. Focus on.
You just gotta be honest with them and, you know, if it's really dirty and. Yeah.
Be like, hey, people love the smell of cherries, get some
Yeah.
cherry or some kind of candle in there, that smells like it. I don't know.
And client communication with sellers, exact same as with the buyers. Build a foundation from meeting or phone call number one. You're setting and managing the expectation. Creating peace of mind ultimately for any client we're dealing with. And then all of this combined will enhance your credibility. Now, with sellers, the other conversation that I could get tough is they list with us, they gotta go by fair housing rules.
That goes back
If
to
they-
your Confederate flag listing. Or-
I mean, I don't remember who we sold to, but I mean, they weren't like, we're not selling to certain people, but. Again, I don't know why I didn't ask them why they had it out there, who knows, but we didn't have any issue on that. Cause that in itself is not violating that, but saying I'm not gonna sell to a group of people. Is, this can, if they won't, if they are in that realm, discontinue representation. Get a hold of Lee, let them know what's going on. Cause that client might call and be like, your client's discriminating against me. It's like, no, it's because you were wanting to do this, that I'm not willing to represent you anymore. So make sure, and then fully document it. And that way, if this becomes an issue that's bigger than just phone calls and they get an attorney involved, you got kind of all your bases covered. So, we get ready to wrap up. Any big questions that we want to cover? I want you guys to go to 16.14 in your guide. And before we start on this, this is from Shift. So the message you put out to attract prospective buyers and sellers is everything. Why would they want to contact you in this market? What would they get if they did? These are two questions at the heart of effective marketing. So you guys are all trying to do different marketing things. This is where I tell you, think of a billboard. You got this much time to capture somebody's attention anymore. So what is that message? What's that billboard-esque message gonna be to capture their attention? And only you can think about it, because you gotta think about what am I trying to attract here? And then build the message around that. On this page, success with co-op agents. First one, being honest with them. There's so many agents that you feel like you can't trust anything they're saying, so you do not want to be that agent, so be trustworthy. Communicate effectively. Give everybody a fair shake. There's sometimes like you feel like they're telling me this because they want to get both sides of the deal, or I'm getting screwed here because of whatever. Don't be that client. Don't hide information. Desmond, when he had that, his client saw the house, wanted to sleep on it. Next day decided to write an offer. Well, during that day, we were putting the offer together. We got a ton of rain. Called that agent that night, like, hey, we're gonna finish up the offer, send it over. He's like, hey, here's the deal. That basement gets wet, like you saw in the disclosure. Highly recommend you go over there before you submit the offer. Since we just got all the train, make sure your client's okay. But went there and it was not a little bit of water. He's like, you could throw and you could hear a splash. It was enough to, I mean, not this, but it was like enough to cover. Old enough, yeah. I can't remember if it was a block foundation, but that agent saved his client a ton of time, saved that client inspection money, potentially appraisal money, was just honest. Would we not want to work with that agent again? That agent's probably 20-something years in the business. Just a great story of being honest. Yeah, he's like, hey, before you do this, take your client back because we disclosed this. So if it comes up in the inspection, we're not doing anything about it. I mean, he didn't say it that way, but it's like, make sure your client's taken care of. He lost, I don't know if that's ever went under contract. I think it has now, but he theoretically, because they've been on the market a while, he walked away from some money by doing that. And that's awesome. It's the best interest of that other client. But also in favor of his client, because why go under contract, waste 2 or 3 weeks off the market to go back on the market? There's a best interest of everybody. Now that's an agent you want to work with.
Win or no deal.
You know? All right, guys, so bold on it, or so tomorrow leverage training. Is it 11?
11 tomorrow.
Then Wednesday is the class with Scott Prosser. That one will be on Zoom as well. Apparently not this Stacy will be joining him. I swear they said Stacy, but
Yeah.
you're the only Stacy I could.
Stacia,
Yeah, I asked him,
Stacia,
if he was doing it. and he told me
Stacia,
no.
maybe,
It could
okay.
be.
Yeah, could be. Good thing. Thursday bowl and Friday put it all together and get after it. So a lot of trainings, again, this is why we offer it via Zoom. Keep coming to trainings, keep working.
Does anybody else wish their bold was on a Monday and not a Thursday, or is it just?
I don't know if they do,
I don't care
I
what
think
it's
that.
on, it's just
Yeah.
not on Thursday.
Yeah.